Again, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Cocktails with the King. I'm
Jonathan Porter. Alongside me always is Jonathan No
Tech. Yeah, I'm sorry. What are you doing?
Starting the show.
Yeah, I'm asking about the sandwich.
Oh, well, I'm paying homage to Remus. Did I tell you that when he was in that race on Lake Michigan for 5 hours in the choppy water, he stopped midway through to have a sandwich?
You didn't tell me about that. All right. I'm going to regret asking this question. How did he get a sandwich in the middle of Lake Michigan?
We'll go into it. In this episode, we're going to go to Exchequer, get lunch over there, and then maybe head over to Marge's still. Maybe we'll get a bourbon there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start the show.
Let's do it. I am over the moon to be inside these walls here at Exchequer.
Yeah, it's nice to be back with our partners for sure.
Man. So anyways, we were talking about George, and I really feel like we need to talk about the king aspect of George Remus. You know, this is a guy that drops his law practice, successful law practice, and announces, I'm going to be a bootlegger. And that's not really how it works. You don't just say, I'm a bootlegger, and the next thing you know,
you don't leave a wildly profitable business behind to do that.
It's all about his acquisitions early on, right? And one of the first major ones is Fleischmann Distilling. And that's one that he plops down almost $200,000 of his own money for. And he quickly realizes that's not enough.
Right, he's got to spend a little bit more, right? Or actually kind of a lot more.
Right, the 200 grand got him the business and what was in production at the time.
Right.
He finds out that there's a warehouse that's got about another 3,000 barrels. Another 150 grand of his own money he's got to push into this point. So we're talking 1920s money, 350 grand, that's a lot of money.
Well, and that's my question is 350 grand, he's a smart guy. He knows there's a big payoff. What kind of payoff are we talking about?
Millions. The payoff is millions. So it is definitely worth the risk to go ahead and do that. And it is. In the first year, he's going to gross for himself almost $30 million.
Which is quite the payoff for an initial investment of $350,000.
These acquisitions definitely helped him along the way.
Absolutely. And actually, that makes a lot of sense now why we went to Uno's and did the Fleischmann's thing.
Oh, you thought I was just bringing you there for the pizza.
Well, it normally is. In fact, I'm a little surprised you didn't order a pizza here.
Fix that. Jonathan. Yo.
Hey, what's up, buddy? So, what are we doing? We're going to grab some dinner before we get started
We can grab a slice, but you know this place, right? Pizzeria, 1943.
Yeah.
One of the most iconic pizzerias in Chicago, if not in the United States. The deep dish pizza was invented here.
I know that. I'm a guide for the pizza tour. Why are you telling me all this stuff?
Right. I didn't get my days mixed up. I'm here about Prohibition business, but this place has always been a bar. Right? It still is a bar to this day. But the majority of the seats in here are a bar.
Yeah.
Listen, back during the Prohibition days, this was a rough bar. One that used to get busted up all the time. The feds were constantly raiding and shutting this place down.
Okay. I know all that. I don't understand what that has to do with the Prohibition tour, or specifically George Remus.
So here's the deal. Ike Sewell, right? He comes to us from Texas. He had the idea that he wanted to open a Mexican restaurant, specifically Tex-Mex, if you remember that. He felt that Chicago didn't have any good Mexican food. So it was his idea. He gets this chef to prepare Rick Ricardo this fine Tex-Mex meal. Rick wakes up the next morning. He's never been so sick off of food in his entire life.
Can I stop you for just a second?
Sure.
You know that I literally say everything you're telling me word for word on our tours, right?
Stay with me here.
All right.
All right. So they put the kibosh on that. The guy wakes up sick the next day. Rick goes to Italy. He gets a taste of pizza. He's like, you know, we're going to do pizza here instead. Two of them are looking at each other, great. I have no clue how to make pizza though. So they bring in Rudy Malnati, one of the chefs, right?
Yeah.
So the deep dish pizza, historic. It's all done right here. But Ike didn't open up this place because he was looking for a paycheck, right?
Okay.
Ike Sewell was already well-to-do.
Yeah.
And that's going to tie in with George Remus.
Go on.
Follow me.
I'm trying to.
In the early 1920s, one of the distilleries that George Remus purchases, one of the biggest scores for him, is the Fleischmann Distilling Company.
Right.
He purchased that in the early 20s. It's about $200,000 for the land and the building.
Okay.
It's also another close to $200,000 for all the whiskey that's inside that building.
Okay.
All right, so it's a lot of money. We're talking 1920s money, right?
Sure.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
The score is close to $6 million, though.
Okay.
It's one of those scores that really puts him on the map. When I talk about how Ike Sewell had already built his fortune here in Chicago, and he did this as kind of like a side project, something just for himself, he was a vice president of Fleischmann Distilling Company.
Get the fuck out of here.
Right. And he's born in like 1901 or 1902, something like that. So he's a young man getting out of college around the time that Remus is purchasing Fleischmann Distilling.
Wait. Are you telling me that that we can reasonably assume that these two guys knew each other?
That's exactly what I'm telling you. This is the best part about it is nobody's really looking for this information to tie these two guys in, this icon of Chicago and the king of bootleggers.
Wait.
But I know that these guys cross paths.
Wait, so you're telling me that the two tours that we've run rather successfully for the last 16 years total between the two have had this connection the whole time and we haven't known it until now?
I've been missing out. And basically what happened was I've been reading more books about George Remus's life and some of the actual business dealings. And when I came across this piece of information, I was able to connect the dots. And I'm like, this timing just lines up perfectly.
All right, well, I feel a little bit bad about being such a dick when you walked up, but I didn't know where you were going with it. This is actually kind of fascinating.
My mind's always on pizza. It's safe for you to assume that. So.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Anyways, I can also reasonably assume that Ike Sewell probably emulated a lot of his life after seeing George Remus. Remember, he's a young man, just gets out of college, starts at this company. He sees how George operates, how George throws these lavish parties around the Queen City, Cincinnati. And Ike starts to do sort of the same thing. It's not for a little bit of time until that really starts to happen.
Okay.
But say like the 40s or so, Ike starts throwing those fabulous parties for the local celebrities, filled with booze, filled with good times, and living sort of that larger than life lifestyle. So large in fact that he's actually, this stretch of street, it's named after him. It's an honorary Ike Sewell way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that actually, because obviously we talk about that on the tour, but so what I'm wowing at, I guess, is the fact that I guess we're assuming a little bit, but it's possible that Remus was Sewell's mentor.
Well, I could say that's definitely reasonable to assume. You're talking about two super larger-than-life, iconic guys.
Yeah.
It all happens in Chicago, right? There's always that Chicago connection. And yeah, their lives are just a little bit intertwined. And I really think that, like you said, Remus was just a huge influence on Ike Sewell and how he carried himself. Now, he finally did get that Tex-Mex restaurant. It's just around the corner. This is a beautiful Victorian mansion that Uno's is in, this dive bar downstairs. Down the street, the Mears Mansion, that's another Victorian mansion. His office used to be on the 3rd floor there, and right next door to it's that Sue Casa.
Well, listen, there's one hugely important question that you haven't answered yet, and I'm gonna need an answer to it. Are we getting a fucking pizza or not?
Yeah, we're definitely getting a pizza.
Excellent,
also, one more thing before you go.
Go.
It's not the end of it. There's one more tie to this restaurant from Fleischmann Distilling. What do you think that might be?
Fleischmann's buried in the basement.
No.
Oh, I'm excited.
Take a look at this.
Fleischmann's active drug. Wait, is it the same company?
Same company. They were making yeast, bourbons, gins, vodka.
Wait,
and
are
it's
they
probably
still
the
using
same yeast that they're using inside of Pizzeria Uno.
No, like, come on, they're still using this?
Swear to God. Like all you bread bakers at home that are baking sourdough loaves, looking at your Fleischmann's yeast, this is all the same company. Originally based out of Ohio, moved to Kentucky after Prohibition.
All right, I gave you way too hard of a time when you walked up. This is actually, this is amazing. This is fantastic. So, and that makes sense. Why wouldn't a distillery have yeast?
Yeah, they're going to need it for their spirits.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then they're selling it to me. That's amazing.
It all ties in.
Yeah, right?
See?
Yeah, that looks good. Well, before we jump into that, I want to talk a little bit about, well, the space that we're in. But specifically, I keep talking about this difference between control and ownership.
Yes.
Right.
So explain to me the difference.
Yeah. So we're at Exchequer, as we've talked about a couple times now, and it is a former Al Capone controlled speakeasy.
The old 226 club.
Right. And that's just its address, 226 South Wabash. But Capone didn't own this place. He controlled it. Here's the difference. He runs the gambling, he runs the booze, he runs the women. Okay.
Sounds like an owner.
That sounds exactly like an owner. But, and he might even be here drinking himself, but here's a question for you, John. The cops come in, they see people drinking. Is drinking illegal?
No, not during Prohibition. I know everybody assumes it is, but it's not illegal to drink.
It wasn't illegal to drink. It was illegal to manufacture, to transport, and sell. Okay, so he's already not on the hook. Well, the other way he's not on the hook is because that's not a crime, if he doesn't own the place, can't come after him either. So then, isn't it an easy way to just say, well, yeah, but they got to know he provided the booze. Well, on whose word? You think the owner of this building is dumb enough to rat out Al Capone?
The guy they probably put in here anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. It's probably the guy's already on Capone's payroll. In fact, Capone's probably going to pay the fine and bail him out of jail, and he can go back to business as usual. You know, and that's how it works. You have to think of Capone as a distributor, much like Ike Sewell. Ike Sewell's a distributor. Okay, where do they get the booze from? Well, they get it from your Jack Daniels, your Remus, your Jim Beam, your wherever the case may be. Well, Remus owns all those things, right? So now he can provide a guy like Capone that alcohol. Now, he's then going to put it into his speakeasies, but none of them own any of these places. So at the lower level, which is where the cops are really focused, they're not getting to these big guys. They're the guys behind the guys, and that's really what you want to be.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense because, like, if you think about his early days in Cincinnati, right? He gets jumped on one of his
almost
first
immediately.
heists.
In fact, like the first one, and so he learns really quickly to remove himself from that street level operation. It takes away a ton of the risk. I mean, you're still assuming a ton of risk when you go into an illegal operation of this caliber and magnitude, but at the same time, by taking those little risks out of the way, you clear the path for you to just start making money hand over fist, that $30 million in 1 year, as you mentioned.
Right, yeah. Well, I think we should maybe finish up lunch here. This pizza looks awesome. Then we can hop the purple line, go up to Marge's still. Let's talk a little bit about like how he actually got these distilleries and pulled the whiskey out of it once we get up there.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's an even better idea to go to Marge's still. That being said, we are definitely not taking the purple line. I got a better way.
It's right outside here. It drops you right off.
Nah, my way's better. Trust me.
Ready? Front door.
Oh, no. Come on. We're going this way.
Where does this go?
Oh, you'll find out.
I'm guessing Marge's still.
Maybe.
And that's a tunnel system that goes through Harry Carey's?
Yep, sure is.
And it makes it all the way up to Marge's still in Old Town?
For the purposes of this episode, yes. Yes, it does.
And here we are.
Boy, I don't believe that this got us all the way from here from downtown.
Yeah, I know, right?
I can't believe it.
Yeah, no, I get it.
No, it's not believable.
Yeah, no, I understand. It seems totally unrealistic.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. You know, I love being downtown. I love being in the Loop. It's where all the action is. It's what tourists think of Chicago being with all the tall buildings. But, like, this is real Chicago. The neighborhood spot, right?
It's where absolutely. It's where we live. Marge is still in Old Town. This
For
is
sure.
Just great.
This is exactly where you want to be on any little
tavern.
Chicago afternoon. But so we talked about the operation. Let's talk about the products.
Yes, so let's talk about the product. And Remus is pushing for quality alcohol. He's quoted as saying, Remus has the best liquor in the business, and America has to come to Remus to get it.
Okay, yeah, he's quoted as saying that, and remember,
he's quoted as saying it about himself.
He's talking about himself. Yeah, he talks about himself in the third person.
Third person. Yeah.
But so here's the deal. Why is it so important to him, do you think, to have the best of the best?
I mean, at this point, he's got 35% of the liquor in the United States.
That seems like a lot.
Huge operation.
Yeah.
And his demand for quality is going to help him establish a brand. The King of Bootleggers becomes not just a product, but also a brand. And brands are very valuable. He can then use that to sell himself and expand his empire.
But here's the problem, though, is that once it leaves his hands, isn't that a little bit out of his control? I mean, you're giving it to these less than scrupulous people who are then going to cut his alcohol. So yeah, when it leaves his hands, it might be the best of the best. But I mean, you know, just think about Marge's, for example, here, right? It's a barber shop / grocery store back then, and the alcohol that you get here is bathtub gin that they're making upstairs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in theory, they could have potentially gotten their base juice from a guy like Remus, but then they may thin it out. They may put
extend
methanol,
basically.
paint thinner, horrible things in there. So, I mean, do you think people are getting the very high-end product that he's trying to put out?
Well, Remus was actually aware of that during his operation, and he did spend money on the inside of his system to ensure that his quality product remained quality. But it was so much of it. There's no way he could control all of it.
But I mean, he's also, I mean, let's be honest. He's not just giving it to the gangsters and the bootleggers and the people on the street finding out. He's providing this alcohol to his own friends and family and things like that in these lavish parties. So they know he's got good stuff. I mean,
yeah,
right?
You're referencing the December 31st.
Well, I'm referencing all of his parties, but that one in specific.
That one's the real one. Inspired, you know, in the Great Gatsby novel.
The parties that he would throw.
People would roll up, and it was like he's handing out cars to people. As their cigars are wrapped in $1,000 bills, and you know, to go to a Remus party was quite the event. You know, the problem with that though comes from him is that, you know, basically flaunting your riches like that, it's starting to catch the eye of people on the federal level.
Well, sure, yeah. With that level of opulence and whatever, you put yourself on people's radar. People like Mabel Walker Willebrandt, right, the head of the enforcement.
She's
of
a great
Prohibition
name to bring into this at this
Yeah.
point, right? So she's, you know, I guess we could fast forward to where she's now 32 years old. She's the assistant to the Attorney General. She's just
Can we just take a moment to appreciate how amazing that is? This sounds almost misogynistic to say it now, but in the early 20s, she is a 32-year-old woman is the Assistant Attorney General of the United States.
the most powerful woman in the United States.
Yeah,
without
well,
a doubt.
and I guess the reason I bring that point up is because it is important to note how amazing of an achievement that is at that time.
Sure.
For her to be at that level of power.
Right.
And she's trying to make a name for herself.
Well, and that's just it, right? Like they push her into this position here, figuring, okay, she's just this woman who's going to be completely overwhelmed by this mess of Prohibition and the Volstead Act and all of that.
Right, it's a joke.
And she's just kind of fold in, and everything's going to resume normal. But she takes this as an opportunity to really make a name for herself.
Yeah.
Remember, she's 5 years out of law school at this point. She's never even tried a case from 27 to 32.
Right.
So now she's really going to take this job and run with it. And that's going to come back to haunt Remus a little bit.
Well, I mean, but if you're going to be that guy, right? I mean, we talked about him being the guy behind the guy, but because of his ego, if you're going to be the guy that puts out quality, you got to show it, right? You have to have the flamboyance. You got to show people you're putting out a quality product.
You're like I said, you're also building a brand, and that's part of that brand as well.
Right, exactly.
That complete opulence that he lives his life in.
And speaking of quality brands, here it is. We've told you about it before. We're going to tell you about it again. Remus Repeal Reserve. It is their fourth in their series. Comes out every September. This is a fantastic sipping whiskey. You're not going to put this in an old fashioned. This is for people who like their bourbon. You sit down on a nice fall day, maybe in front of a fire. I don't know, put a sweater on, have yourself a little sip of the good stuff. It's got caramel notes. It's sharp on the tongue. Finishes with those oaky tannins. Nice, spicy, good drinking bourbon. You guys are going to enjoy this one. Go find it. Oh, it's good. Back to the show.
Refreshing.
It's good stuff.
Tell me more about Mabel.
I will. And we're going to get more into the legal aspect of things and the rule breaker. But we're going to do that in the next episode. For the time being, I got somewhere to be. I got to get the hell out of here.
See ya.
God, I really hope I'm not too late. Oh, yeah, that's about right. Damn it. I don't know why I rushed.
So where did you have to go anyway? As it turns out, nowhere. Nowhere at all. Well, join us next week for Chicago Prohibition Tour's final episode of Cocktails with the King. Once again, I am Jonathan Notek, here as always with...
Jonathan Porter.
He remembered to say his name this time.
Jesus!